listening to Pop This, the podcast where three women talk about pop culture. Here are your hosts, Lisa Christiansen, Andrea Gin, and Andrea Warner.
So I was working on a little project at work where a friend of mine, Margaret Gallagher, we like to make recipes that become popular on TikTok. Not just any recipe, but something
fun.
A little interesting. So yesterday we got together to make a Watergate salad. Are either of you familiar with the Watergate salad?
No, tell us.
Okay, 5 ingredients. We've got canned pineapple with the juice. We have mini marshmallows, pistachio jello pudding, Cool Whip, and pecans. That is the entire salad.
What was the last ingredient?
Pecans.
It sounded like tampons.
No,
okay,
no.
no, it wasn't tampons.
No, pecans. Pecans?
Served
pecans?
on a tampon. I love it.
So you just mix it all together?
Yeah, so you put that can of like shredded up pineapple, and then you throw on the pistachio pudding. I don't know. I wasn't even aware that there was such a thing as pistachio jello pudding. I did not know this, but there it is on the shelf.
I did.
You did?
It's good.
You like it?
I've had it. It's good. Yeah.
Never had it before. And
It's a bit of an upsetting green color, but it tastes
that's
good.
it, exactly. So it turns the pineapple like green slime. And then and then you put the mini marshmallows in. And then the Cool Whip. And stir that up and let it sit for an hour so that pudding can get And then you just decorate it on the top with some crushed up pecans. And yeah, I don't understand how it became a salad. Like, this is not, it apparently, the origin story of it being called the Watergate salad has nothing to do with Watergate. There was some sort of theory that maybe a chef who worked at a hotel in Watergate and created it, but it doesn't look like it. What it looks like, and this is probably makes more sense, it was like one of those craft creations. Like, how can we make you create something that's only with our products? So,
oh, yeah, okay.
right? So you're not going...
What's your review of actually eating the salad?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was definitely like not a salad at all. Like, if you're thinking, I mean, I think it would be kind of fun though at Christmas to bring it because, you know, you could preface it with, I'm just trying to be hip and now and bring you a TikTok recommendation.
I'm going to challenge your definition of salad because I think it's anything chopped and mixed in a bowl or like in parts in a bowl. Because like there's cookie salad. Have you ever had like cookie salad?
No, I have not. What's that?
It was really popular for a while in Manitoba. I want to say in like the 2000s. It had a weird resurgence. It's like the kind of recipe that you would find coil bound in like a community cookbook.
The best,
like a church cookbook. Those are the best cookbooks. There's always so many recipes for crazy cake or wacky cake. Like that is... And it's always like...
Is that like funnel cake or something? Or
no, it's just kind of like a take on Rice Krispie cake. But they can't call it that because it's trademarked, I guess. And sometimes it has like molasses and sometimes it has like a melted chocolate. But cookie salad, what's really important here, it has sliced mandarins in it and it has vanilla pudding. And then it has those cookies that are like you buy them and they come in a sleeve and they're like a digestive biscuit, but they have chocolate underneath. And you like mash those
like a hobnob
up.
Kind of thing, or
yeah, and you like let it hang out in the bowl. It actually is very delicious. But it's a cookie salad.
I think, Lisa, like that's a bold move to go to your whatever holiday event you're going to and just take something that you know will just be so out there and controversial and that you don't expect people to like. Like that's a baller move to go to someone's house with.
It's a good troll move. Like we had a school potluck once where a guy brought just a bucket of coleslaw. It was like in high school, and he just brought like a huge bucket of coleslaw. It did not go over, but like I did respect it on some level. You know, I was like, okay, like 4 liters of coleslaw. I don't know why you thought 20 kids in your French homeroom in grade 12 would want this. Like everybody else brought cookies, a bag of chips. Not him.
Not him. No, go straight for the coleslaw.
Someone comes over to my house with like a cookie salad or a Watergate salad. At first, you're just like, what? But then I think I would get into it. I think it would become the life of the party. Everybody would want to try it.
Yeah, it reminds me of ambrosia salad. Did you ever have that?
It's called it's called ambrosia adjacent.
Yeah, it's like it's a relative. It's a cousin.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I guess the difference is the green from the pistachio pudding is what, and taste wise, like it's not terrible. It's not the worst thing you've ever eaten at all. But I don't know if I would go back for seconds or anything. No, I doubt that.
I'm from the land of like the savory Jell-O salad. Like I for sure had family gatherings where there were like shavings of carrots served floating in an orange Jell-O mold. Like I've lived that life, so I feel like I have a pretty high tolerance for just like those unusual takes.
Well, then I definitely would love to hear your take on the Watergate salad for sure. Yeah.
Like, why do you think it was so huge on TikTok?
Well, there's not really a good explanation usually for these things. Nostalgia, but then again, I'm sure the people on TikTok were not originally having it in the 70s. That's for sure. I think like the first time it sort of was created was around 75, which is when the pistachio pudding emerged. But then at Wikipedia, there's some sort of strange entry where it says, and I'm quoting Wikipedia, so I please, don't shoot the messenger. Like, I have no idea what this means, but it said that Helen Keller was known to make this salad.
That can't be true. That absolutely can't be true.
I believe it.
I don't know. Did she write in her diary today? I made how do people know that? Like, did she come to a potluck and bring it?
Maybe she brought it over. Yeah, she brought it to someone's house. Maybe
it sounds too contemporary to me,
doesn't it? Yeah, I know.
Doesn't it? It seems too aggressively 70s.
It really is. I mean, it's definitely those little books that you have of 70s things.
I mean, it's got too many flavorful items in it to give Weight Watchers recipe card, but it's in the realm. You know what I mean?
Well, I accidentally bought the light Cool Whip too. So,
wow. So then you made it you brought that in.
Yeah. So I can't say for sure if it's a diet sort of thing,
I don't trust your review now because you used light Cool Whip.
I know.
That potentially
the whole thing off.
Yeah, that could ruin the whole thing.
You're like those commenters who are like, can I make the cookies with no flour and no butter and no sugar? What if I also have the people that have no ingredients and that are like, I made it with dirt and it didn't taste good.
Yeah, I know. I did look through the comments on this recipe and everybody was like, yeah, and I tried putting coconut in it. And I went, well, that's not a Watergate salad. That's a whole other thing. Get it together.
That's taking it to the tropics.
Yeah, that's a whole other, where I don't even know where people, obviously this was created with some pantry items in mind. There's a chance you'll have this stuff on hand. Not everyone has coconut on hand.
People are always slipping you coconut, though. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like people always want to be adding coconut places it has no business being. And I say that as someone who respects the mighty flavor of the coconut. Yeah, I don't dislike it, but, there's a time and a place, right?
And in your seasonal salad is not that place.
I mean, it's a seasonal. You can make it look like snow, so it's a little bit seasonal.
hear me out. You're taking away the pineapple. You're adding a mango. I'm like more interested in the coconut now. You know,
Yeah.
It's going somewhere different, unexpected, kind of like the film we watched.
Good segue. Look at that.
Wow.
I'm Lisa Christiansen.
I'm Andrea Gin.
And I'm Cynara cosplaying as Andrea Warner.
Woo! What? I bet people didn't even notice.
I tried to bring her energy, like her sexual energy. Could you feel it?
Wow.
Yeah. She brings that sort of kittenish.
Yes,
purr.
she does. Yes. Rather sly.
Well, yeah, so in case you didn't know, you're listening to Pop This. And today we have Cynara Geisler on to talk about the movie May December, which, sidebar, I'm just going to say the Pop This holiday season has been quite a rough ride.
Yeah, I would say, yes.
We started off with four Christmases, which everybody thought was literally the worst Christmas movie they've ever seen.
Wow.
We pivoted from that to Best Christmas Ever, starring
Worst
Brandy
title ever.
and Heather Graham.
Heather Graham,
which
yeah.
got more thumbs down across the board. Last week was, a nicer episode, the Love Actually and versus The Holiday, and we had, a special guest on from the Holiday podcast, Sam from the Holiday podcast. The holiday season podcast.
Dream.
Sorry.
It was a dream episode for me.
So that was a dream episode. Yeah, that's
Yes.
been the one bright spot in our holiday schedule so far. And now we are at the movie May December, which, just so everybody knows, has nothing to do with Christmas or the holidays.
Boy, oh boy, does it not.
So don't hit play on that thinking you're going to see something festive, because you're not.
But as we are doing, as you mentioned, the pivoting, lots of pivoting here. We are now pivoting from the holidays to the Oscars, which is a whole other celebration in and of itself.
That's like Lisa Christmas.
When awards season starts, it is, as many people, you can take your summer, you can take your fall, awards season, that's the big one. That's when we really live, people. The fake competitiveness, the movies, the glamour, the envelopes, the dresses, the whole thing begins. And I couldn't be more excited.
Possibility of being slapped.
Right?
Yeah, that's always there now, isn't it?
It will always be there. So we've got so much to
Yeah.
look forward to. But yeah, this movie will probably be at, I would guess, the top of the nominations. I mean, all of the movies we see now I think they have until the end of December, right? Isn't that when movies need to come out before, to be eligible, right? So
Yeah, we're in the kind of last push.
yeah.
So if you want to,
Yeah, and I will say, I don't think we've seen a movie this year where all three leads in this movie were just acting their butts off from start to finish. I've never seen actors acting harder than in this film this year.
this film should win for most acting.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't mean that as a diss.
Yeah.
Truly, when have you seen this much acting? It's been a while,
Never.
I think. Yeah, really.
So
But
many
we should-
furtive glances, so much. Yes, you're right.
We should start by reading Cynara's bio. Even though you've been on the podcast many, many times, there might be some listeners unfamiliar. So, Lisa, do you want to read her bio?
Cynara Geisler is a chronically ill writer, performer, editor, and book publishing professional who invented toddler grandma style and loves to talk about pop culture, fat liberation, feminism, and feelings. She has appeared on our podcast numerous times, including our Poltergeist, Cruel Intentions, White Lotus, Lula Rich, Encanto, the Taylor Swift Eras concert film, and our Christmas childhood special episodes. Welcome, and very excited about the
Welcome
toddler
back.
grandma style.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, rolls right off the tongue.
It sure does.
I'll read the background of the movie. May December is a 2023 American drama film directed by Todd Haynes from a screenplay by Sammy Birch, based on a story by Birch and Alex Mechanic. Loosely inspired by Kay Letourneau, it stars Natalie Portman as an actress who travels to Georgia to meet and study the life of a controversial woman she is set to play in a film. The woman being infamous for her 23-year-long relationship with her husband, which began when he was just 13 years old. May December was released in select theaters in the U.S. on November 17th before streaming on Netflix on December 1st. It received critical acclaim and various accolades, including nominations for 4 Golden Globes, and was named one of the top 10 films of 2023 by the American Film Institute. And that is from Wikipedia. Cynara, do you have the outline up?
Always trusted.
I do.
Always trusted.
Okay.
I do. I can read the synopsis. Elizabeth Berry, played by Portman, is a television actress who arrived in Savannah, Georgia to meet Gracie Atherton, played by Julianne Moore, whom she will be playing in an upcoming indie movie. Gracie has agreed, inexplicably, once you know the facts, to allow this stranger to hang out with her family for a week or so, the same week her twins will graduate from high school. What could this unremarkable woman, whose main concern is a lack of hot dogs, have ever done to warrant a movie being made about her? Turns out, 20 years earlier, Gracie, a 36-year-old married woman with kids, had an affair with a fellow employee at a pet shop. This fellow employee, named Joe, was in the 7th grade. Gracie went to prison where she had Joe's baby behind bars. The tabloids, unsurprisingly, went berserk for the story. After serving her time, Gracie and Joe married and have been together ever since. They have 3 children and are about to be empty nesters. Joe, played by Charles Melton, is now 36, the same age as Gracie when they first met in the pet shop. And that's Sheila O'Malley from RogerEbert.com.
Thank you. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, this is, as we mentioned, loosely based around the Kay Letourneau story. How familiar are you two with the Kay Letourneau story?
I would say very. A large part of it, I wonder too, if it's because it happened in Seattle, which is, kind of close to here. And I wonder if we just got a lot of extra news, but it was a big, big story. And I think it was, it's not like we had never heard this kind of story before, with, a student and a teacher. But I think what made this different was because the woman was the teacher and the boy was the student. And also because she went to jail and came back and then had to go back again. And they still had their relationship. So it just seemed to have a lot of kind of wild dimensions to it.
Yeah, I'd heard of it for sure. I don't think I was as profoundly familiar with all the tabloids, but it's just because I was, I don't know, doing the math. I was 14 when that happened, so I was like aware in the way that like probably it got mentioned on hard copy or like some kind of trashy TV news rag show that like I would have seen a few minutes of, but I became more aware of that story actually when I watched Dawson's Creek when I was a little bit older, because it opens with like a student teacher affair, and I think people at the time were like, oh, it's referencing Mary. It's like the story that people bring up whenever that trope of like a younger person, like other than Mrs. Robinson, obviously, right? Like I think it's the modern day, much more disturbing version of the idea of a younger, like a boy, really, being in love with or having a sexual relationship with an adult woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think,
or being groomed or predatored upon, I should say, right? Preyed upon. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely I don't read in the times, the 90s or whatever, I didn't read tabloids, but I still was keenly aware of this story. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that Todd Haynes talks about like these huge stories that are just part of everyone's cultural fabric. Like everybody knows the story vaguely, even if you haven't taken a deep dive into it, or you haven't seen Dawson's Creek, or you haven't, like, it's just in our swimming in our collective minds are stories like this. And it's so fascinating that he decided to take this. And then, because like you're used to movies kind of like taking stories and glamorizing them into like a Hollywood version of it, but watching this, it kind of struck me that he's kind of done the opposite. It's like he's taken this tabloid story and is showing us on screen this really drab, mundane, like sad version of it on film.
I do feel like he loves a domestic drama, right? Like throughout his work, there's always that theme. And I feel like the image for me that like most captures the vibe of this film is when sees that like folded in half glamorous picture of Gracie like holding the baby in that like pink dressing gown and her hair's all done. And then when she unfolds the rest of it, you can see it's her legs in like restraints because she's in jail or under house arrest. And I'm just like, isn't that it, right? This like glamorous surface. And it's like, no, she's in jail. She's in jail and she did a crime and it's very bad. Even as, tabloids are making money and sort of like obsessed with her appearance and her as this like, I don't even know, if an object of fascination, right? Yeah. I think he's so good at making movies about that, about like what are the appearances that people put on versus like what is the truth underneath that. I think that's like a real ongoing theme in his work.
Yeah, I think we did his movie Safe here for the podcast. And
I love Safe.
I think
that's my favorite Todd Haynes film.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just think that is a brilliant film. Another Julianne Moore.
Julianne Moore's a real muse for him, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because she'll really go there with a role. Like, I heard him talking about this. He went on the soundtracking podcast where they talk about, like, scores, and we should absolutely talk about the score in this movie because it is cuckoo bananas, and I love it. But he talked about Natalie Portman actually brought him this script, and he had never worked with her before. And so it was brought to him with the sort of implication that she would play the Elizabeth part. And immediately, as soon as he's looking at the part for a 60-something woman, he's like, well, I know which other actress would go all in on a part like this. Miss Julianne Moore. And like, how often do we actually get a movie with like a 40-something and 60-something female lead kind of cat and mouse game going on? Like, I thought that was fascinating too. I can't, like, there's nothing like it really, right? Like, it's such an interesting dynamic for a movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people are also talking about the performance of Joe by Charles Melton. Mainly known for his performance in Riverdale, I would say.
Guy from Riverdale. I don't think anyone thought he had this in him, right?
Yeah. I was quite shocked at the sort of, the where he takes this role, because it is very nuanced and very in-depth, and it is like up to par with the rest of the acting performances in this movie.
How Todd Haynes to find, a gem amongst the sort of like television actors, right? Like, I think about like from the Dawson's Creek era, like Michelle Williams is the TV actress that really went on to be prestige, and I'm just like, maybe this guy from Riverdale, like maybe Todd Haynes has given him a prestige runway with this role, because he really did act the heck out of it. Because I would say in the beginning, you really think it's Julianne Moore or Natalie Portman's film. And by the end, I think it's really firmly his film. And that's really, I thought, an interesting sort of journey we went on. When Todd Haynes was talking about this, he said something I thought was really interesting, which is basically like, to him, the most exciting cinema is cinema where you don't understand where you're going. You haven't gone there before. You're not entirely prepared for the experience. It's beyond your control, and it's your preset ideas of of where you want to measure something by what you already believe are called into question. And so like that's what he thinks movies should do. And I would definitely say that this is a movie where you cannot expect how it will unfold. Even if you know what the story is, like I think you're not going to be prepared for the way that some of the scenes go, the way that some of the interactions go. It's really interested in disrupting everything you think you know about this kind of story and these kind of people. It really wants you to be unsettled. And part of that is the music, right? The music slaps you silly throughout, like by design. And I looked it up because I was so curious. And it's actually music from a 1971 movie, The Go-Between. It's a British film. It was like quite well received. It won a Palme d'Or.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Todd Haynes watched it. He saw it on Turner Classic Movies and he was like, that's it. That's the music I want. So they basically took that music from The Go-Between, which is this movie about the go-between is like a boy who is helping a couple correspond. They're having an affair. And it doesn't really have that much to do with this movie, but it's just this really striking score that kind of breaks all the rules of what a movie score should do. Like it's kind of disruptive. It's very loud. It's very circular. And yeah, he really wanted to use this music. And he also said that they filmed this in 23 days. That's all they had time for. And that he played the music the entire time they were filming. So the actors lived in the world of the score and they would like turn it down to record dialogue. But essentially like this music deeply informed the performances, which I just think is like really interesting and very, very cool. And I mean, that hot dog sting, legendary.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really, it's a very interesting, like we were talking before about like how these people are acting, like we can really feel the acting. But then the funny thing also is that these characters are also acting as well, their own lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a couple pretending to be a very normal family, right? Normal family with kids and, you know, like it's almost as if that stuff didn't happen. It was just a trial we had to go through to get to here. Kind of like a Shania Twain song. Looks like we made it, you know? And then seeing Natalie Portman going in there, knowing what she wants and having to, you know, insinuate herself and, you know, pretend to be someone as well. So it's got so many layers of acting on it.
Yeah. And you would think that Natalie Portman's character would be the easiest one to like in this, you know, on this journey. But as we go along, like she's like this kind of like, she almost makes the watcher feel the most uncomfortable in this movie, like at various points. It's very surprising in that way. And then I also think that Todd Haynes did a great job in showing the children of this family. Cause like I spent a lot of time thinking like this whole thing is just normalized for those kids. And they're just a family and they're just living their lives. And yeah, I don't know. It made me think a lot about that and like what that experience must be for those kids growing up. Just having their lives like that.
The longer you spend with Natalie Portman's character, Elizabeth, I think the more monstrous she becomes to you, which is really interesting too, because obviously the character of Gracie is like the obvious monster. So I loved the way he sort of played with that. Like she's looking at the casting videos of 13-year-old boys and going, I just don't think any of them are sexy enough, right? And the director's like, you need to come home.
Yeah.
Like, you're getting out of control. And just... yeah, her sort of like calculated way. I'm obsessed with that scene in the pet shop where she like goes to the back room where they had the affair and like masturbates essentially. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, yeah, I think it must be weird for Natalie Portman to get questions about whether she really prepares for parts this way, because I know people are going to be asking her that. Natalie Portman, are you this method?
Yeah, I mean, and the other part that you're always thinking about is also this. I mean, obviously, we know that what Gracie is just a, raving narcissist. It's quite horrific. Nobody normal would say, yeah, just come spend time with my family during a really important time for us, the graduation, and just hang out with us and have dinner. Like, it's so awful. And it just speaks to no matter how bad the circumstances were, she's okay to stay in the limelight for this. She's fine.
Oh,
with
yeah.
it.
The movie really wants us to know, like, how much people kind of want to be famous. And
yes.
that line about, like, wanting to be seen, right? Really wanting to be seen is something that, like, repeats over and over. And we constantly, this movie uses mirrors a lot. It uses windows a lot. It really sort of wants us to think about, like, the artifice of, like, what are the faces we put on? What are the airs we put on? And yeah, thinking like, I want you to feel seen and known is the first thing that Natalie Portman says. Natalie Portman's Elizabeth says to Gracie, right? And that's also what Joe says about Gracie, is like, she made me feel seen, right? So just this idea of her as the looker and how she sees people, and like Elizabeth trying to like see something deeper, right? When she's asking those prying questions. So what are your relationships like with your children? And she's going, well, I thought this movie was only set between 1992 and 1994. Like, what do you need to know about my relationship with my children? And I loved like that part, because I do think the movie did a really good job of showing us that she's like, after all this, like, she's not a great mom. Like, clearly her kids don't really like her that much.
No, they
because
do not.
Clearly all the photos of her pregnant in jail that we see like through the tabloid montages was like a big deal and got a lot of attention. And then sort of at the end of it, she's got these, kids who are not super happy to spend time with her. There's that just like heartbreaking scene with her daughter trying on dresses.
Oh,
and she's
my
like,
God. That was,
and she's so happy with the sleeveless dress, the little white sleeveless dress. And Gracie goes, oh, you're so brave to show your arms like that. I would never.
That was so awful.
What a modern woman. And you're like, she's nagging her own daughter. And what killed me about that is like, I watched it more than once, and I noticed in the scene where she's crying because the neighbors people have canceled a cake order. And it's because they have a sick sister and they're leaving town. So I love that she's like, how could they do this to me? It's like, meanwhile, their sister's dying. Like, she has no
it's
empathy
also
for them.
about her.
She's like, they canceled the cake order. How could they do this? I just hate it. I wasted hours of my life. And then she ends up serving like the cake that's no longer being, picked up to Joe, and she's wearing the same type of dress, like showing her arms that she like didn't let her daughter get. And I'm just like,
I didn't notice that.
This is so psycho. Yeah, like,
well, how about
like
when the older daughter says, did you give her a scale for a present?
Did you give her a scale? Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. That was...
And the boy twin, she keeps going, well, he's got a calcium deficiency. He's so small. I'm just worried they're going to think he skipped a grade. He doesn't look manly enough. And you're just like, this lady.
Yeah.
Like, she is so controlling and so can't let anyone else. You're right. Like, it's that thing of you can't let anyone else be the star of a moment. Like, she's constantly picking at the people around her. Like, the movie opens up and she goes, that's 2 when Joe takes another beer. Like, she's counting how many beers he has. Like, nobody is allowed to just exist around her. They're always being scrutinized by her. And I think the movie's like really deft at showing us and people around her going, oh, she's kind and she's like a pillar, her friend or whatever that's at the barbecue. And you're like, is she though? Because we're not really seeing a lot of evidence that she's particularly kind.
Well, it feels like her family, it feels like they're being held hostage by her in a way.
Yes.
That's what I couldn't help but thinking. And you kind of think like, what is going on in the mind of Joe when is he happy? Does he think he's happy and he's not happy? Does he wish he could leave? Like,
there are those odd moments,
happened?
Though. We know he didn't really get a chance to grow up, and he was so quick. But there were some of those moments, like when he drops off the family at the in the van, like they've got the minivan. And, the kids are going in and he's all dressed up and you can see how proud he is. And like he has and when he's sitting with his son and they smoke that joint up on the roof, like they're such odd scenes where the children seem older than him.
Yeah. It is fantastic how he plays those scenes as both childlike and as a parent. He does a really good bit of acting there. And I also just think the whole thing with the monarchs and the raising the butterflies and releasing them could be such a blunt metaphor, honestly, but it's handled really delicately. Like I actually think, to me, and Don was saying this too, it's kind of like he's doing a science project because he never really got to do that because he had a kid at 13 with a 36-year-old woman. So like he's sort of got he has this innocence to him, right? Like this sort of like he didn't really get to, grow up. And now his kids are graduating and it's like not super clear to us if he did. Do you know what I mean? So his kids are sort of surpassing him. And that's a really strange dimension of the movie. But it's also very clear that his kids love him and like respect him or at least care about him. Their interactions with him are more loving than their interactions with their mom. That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, the whole idea that they stayed in the same town too. That's talking about like moves, right? Like what was that about? Just like again, being a narcissist. To stay in the
same town.
Yeah.
Where you had an existing family.
Yes.
Like you had kids and a husband. Like, I think it's great when Elizabeth like meets with her first husband and he's just like, what would make a grown woman have an affair with a 7th grader? And you're like, that's the question, isn't it? Like, it's so blunt. And you're just like, yeah, not only to do that, but then to stay, to be like determined to stay. So I think like that part is so interesting too. Like that refusal to show guilt, that refusal to that really interesting conversation with Elizabeth where they're, I think, at a flower arranging workshop because she's trying to impress her with her skills, I guess. Do you remember that scene where they're just like arranging flowers together at and Elizabeth is going, well, yeah, like she's asking her, so do you really look back on your life and like dwell in the past and think about your choices? Gracie says to her, and Elizabeth's like, well, yeah, sometimes, because we get the, impression that she's determined not to do that. Like she's only looking forward. And that's how she can, I guess, stay in this town despite all of this history that is constantly asserting itself, right?
But she also wants that attention. Like, at the end of the movie, when she tells Elizabeth that I talk to my son every day, he phones me every day. Like that was such a creepy moment.
What are those conversations like? Her gay son who's like
with that son. Oh my gosh.
Her first marriage son, who I think is the lead singer at a Margaritaville. Like I can't tell if that place was a Margaritaville, but I think it's like the Savannah, Georgia version of a Margaritaville. I loved that character. Oh,
he was amazing.
He was like, I'm a phoenix in the ashes, and her affair happened right before my birthday, and they didn't cancel it. And one guy came over, and I gave him a hand job, and we never spoke again. You're like, wow.
There's a lot going on here. Like we're just processing.
His monologue, his brief monologue. I was like, wow. Like there's a whole other film just like nested in this character.
So, Lisa, you said you did a bit of a deep dive into the Mary Kay Letourneau story as a result of watching this movie. Like, what is your sense of how closely this character resembles Mary Kay Letourneau in her life? Just from, like, watching those interviews and archival footage and whatnot.
Yeah. One of the interviews I watched was with their daughters, too. With their 2 daughters. And, who, like the ones in this movie, seem well adjusted and I do know that they eventually did split up, and she died of cancer in 2020. Mary Kay,
she died like a year after they divorced.
Yeah,
I read. Like they divorced in 2019, and she died a year later.
Yeah, and now he is about to he just became a father again, and also he's about to become a grandfather. So I think he's 37, if I'm not mistaken, and is going to be a grandfather. So, he doesn't, like in the interviews, very similar to the movie, he doesn't speak much. he doesn't say too much. And we were talking about, there's a scene in one of the interviews, is with an Australian broadcaster, where, you know, he's really pushing like that she did something really terrible and she's just not accepting it. So she keeps, you know, turning to her husband saying, you were, you know, who was the boss? Who was the boss?
Who was the boss?
Yeah, who was pushing? Who was doing this? And the interviewer is going, my God, this is disgusting. Like, he's like,
yeah,
you know, you're an adult. You're his teacher. I do think that there's something to do with that. Like, it's interesting that this screenplay had her working at a pet shop. Whereas I think we feel like a little bit differently about this teacher role. There's like the responsibility that we feel a teacher has to not do something like this.
There's something very like juvenile about a pet shop. Like I was thinking about that because it's like in a strip mall next to a pawn shop. And I was like, it made me think about Petland. Like I grew up with Petland being in my like local mall. I don't know if Petland was a chain here too, but it's like the mall pet store chain, and they sell pet food, but they also sold like puppies and hamsters and like, I don't know. There's something about a mall pet shop where you can just like hear a budgie screeching that just really evokes a certain time for me. And I feel and I feel like part of that is like, you think of her as younger than she is because she's like a 36-year-old woman working in a strip mall pet shop. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that feels really different than like your middle school teacher, right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, there's the power dynamic because she hired this teen, but like and also clearly it had to be a pet shop so they could do that cool scene where they throw the jacket over a rattlesnake in that like made for TV movie that they show within the movie where it's like, you're not scared, are you? And then the jacket, like they get undressed and they throw their clothes on the snake and it's like, it's just so ridiculous. You need that sexy snake scene that you can only have by locating the place of work as a strip mall pet store. I'm also obsessed with the owner of that pet store when Elizabeth goes to talk to them, keeping the article about the scandal at the pet store like
laminated.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, and I think it speaks to this deeply human thing of wanting our lives to be of importance or of record in some way, right? And like in a town like that, like being mentioned in the paper is a big deal. Like I always think about my grandma. So when I was a kid, I used to go grocery shopping with my grandparents a lot because I was like co-parented by them. And my grandma had her purse snatched in the parking lot of a superstore when I was little. It was like quite traumatic. She was fine and the purse was dumped and the money was stolen, but we got it back. But it got a little write-up in the paper. And it didn't say her name, but it was like 63-year-old woman robbed of purse. And she cut it out and she put it on her fridge. And I still think about that because like to her, that was somehow part of it, processing that experience, I guess. But it was also like, here I am, I'm in the paper. And like, there's just something deeply sad, but also weirdly moving to me about that, about this sort of what that says about us as people. And that thing, that wanting to be seen, wanting to be recognized, even if it is your place of business being the site of a really horrible affair between a 36-year-old and 13-year-old, right? Like, whew.
And the fact that nobody in this town just didn't want to engage with her, like, this is disgusting. Like, no, I'm not meeting with you to talk about this. This is a young boy's life that we're talking about. Everyone is willing to talk to her because she's famous, and they even invite her. And they even invite her to the school, for heaven's sake.
Okay, can we please talk about Natalie Portman talking to a teenage drama class with, the daughter of the woman she's about to play in a movie, telling them about how, the great thing about sex scenes is that after a while, it's like, are you pretending you're not having fun? Or are you pretending you're having fun? I'm like, wow.
Yes.
Like,
and the drama teacher not going, okay, thanks very much for coming, just waiting it out.
Yeah. You're just like, people in this town really have a hard time confronting this lady directly. Like any
but
lady.
You're saying like they want to. Like this is giving.
But they're drawn to it. They're drawn to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess that's my question, Lisa, just from watching those interviews. Like, do you think that this character is close to who Mary Kay Letourneau like was? Or do you think it's like a different character?
Well, I think the interviews that I watched with her, there was definitely
she's pretty. There's an all-American girl, like a vibe to it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but she just is like, it's that obliviousness, which I think they caught in the movie quite well too, with that, you know, she's sitting there with this interviewer and her husband and talking about the kids going, you know, I tell everyone, be careful if they'll grow up so fast and you won't even notice it. And part of you is like, okay, you're just like putting this very normal spin on an like a really tragic, horrible story.
It's kind of like if you put a grenade between two pieces of bread and you're like, what a great sandwich. Like, it feels like that's her whole way of living, right? It's just trying to, she doesn't ever want to acknowledge the elephant in the room.
No, and she knew him, the real story, she knew him since he was in grade 2.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The part, and in this movie too, where she does say to Natalie Portman at one point, oh, you know, he's been with more women than I've been with men. She brings it up.
Oh, that.
And you're just like,
God. She's like,
what?
He was 13.
I've only been with my first husband, you know, so he's been with more women. Like, okay.
And the card
like,
that she shows, that he was asked to write a card about.
Do you mean the assignment that he wrote about
the
peace?
assignment,
In his school class that he gave to her?
Childlike. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm also obsessed with when he gives the scene, so good. And you blink and you miss it. But when he's like trying to find one of the clandestine love letters from jail, the only one he like saved and didn't get rid of for Elizabeth, what he has hidden it inside is a VHS copy of the show Cops, which I just think is so funny. It's like, where is Gracie? What is Gracie never going to be looking at? A VHS of Cops. And it's like hidden in there. And that's, that letter. My gosh.
That leads to the scene that is probably going to win Natalie Portman many awards, which is her acting out that letter in a mirror. Like, to me, that is the most kind of stunning epitome acting performance of this whole movie, is just like leading up to that moment where you realize that she has taken that letter and memorized every word of it and is like acting it to herself in a mirror.
It's beautiful. And just like all those scenes, like when she's loaned the box of photographs, or she's looking through the tabloids and she's like mimicking Gracie's poses, or the way she pouts, or the way, you know, like she's just like, it's so creepy. And that mirror monologue is just like, the apex of it all.
The part that actually sent a chill down my spine, though, like in those movies where, you know, all of a sudden someone turns out to be a double agent or something. It was when they were at the restaurant and they go into the bathroom together. And all of a sudden she starts to do that lisping. And I just got a chill, like, you're like, you know what you're doing. And and it was so unsettling.
It's where the thriller dynamic comes in for me. Like really between Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore, because they both are running a game here. Mm-hmm. And it's like, who is running it better? Who is running it tighter? Who's like the better liar? Who's better at manipulating? Because I think so much of Gracie's mannerisms are manipulative. Yes. Like the lisp that comes and goes, I'm naive. I always have been. You're like, really?
Yeah.
It's clearly calculated. The fact that the crying she does, that is clearly, she really portrays herself as the baby in this relationship when she's an adult woman. All her stories she tells about her brothers, about her dad, or about these men taking care of her. Like, she really presents this narrative of her as this woman who's fragile and needs to be taken care of. Yet at the same time, we have this opposing information of like, she knows how to hunt and hunted the quail that they're eating for dinner. Do you know what I mean? Like, so incredible. I just love it. Yeah, right? Like, she's out there with her 2 hunting dogs. You're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
But then we just have Joe in this other corner who's just collateral damage in like both their stories. But he he somehow, like, he doesn't fade into the background. He is just like I was like, I felt, to me, that was like, I felt the worst in this movie when she is having that meltdown over that cake being like not accepted, and he comes home and hears her like crying and has to like, you know, he kind of just has like this deep sad sigh and like drags himself up the stairs to the bedroom because he knows he has to go comfort her and, you know, try to help her through whatever is happening. And it's all over this stupid fake cake order. And it's just like, to me, the exhaustion and sadness of his life just like kind of gel in that moment of seeing him just like walk up those stairs.
Yeah. I think his performance is really special because we're also like, you know, we've got this butterfly metaphor, but like the movie is very much like him finally stepping into the truth of what's happened to him, mostly through Natalie Portman coming to town, right? Like he's starting to realize, like he says that thing to her, like, oh, you know, she saw me, I wanted it. And then he goes, I don't know. Like he starts to express doubt when he's talking to her. Also, that scene where she goes to his job with him, his like x-ray technician job, and she's wearing a diaphanous white blouse and a black bra made me laugh so hard. I was like, oh my gosh, you are not subtle. Like you are ridiculous. But like she's working him, but at the same time, I kind of think he knows that a little bit. And he is realizing that like his marriage does not make him happy. His children are about to leave. And so he is also has an opportunity here, you know, like that's what I felt like the movie was building a bit towards, is like I don't get the sense that those two are staying together. Do you know what I mean?
No, but at the same time, there was when Natalie Portman did bring up, like Elizabeth brings up, you know, you're the same age as me, you can do other things, and he goes, no, I can't. No, she'll be fine. No, she won't. Like it did make you go, ooh, like this is a long-standing. Like you have been conditioned. You have been.
Yeah.
And you are easily manipulated for sex again, twice. Like we saw with Elizabeth, right?
It's true.
Like that was very easy for her to initiate that.
It was easy, but he got mad about it, which I felt like was good. Because we don't really see him getting angry. And then I thought it was really significant that at the what do I want to say? At the graduation, he went and stood off by himself.
Yeah,
like he didn't sit. He didn't sit with her. He stood and he like had his moment of pride for his kids. And that's like juxtaposed with him letting his like monarchs, who he's like his monarch butterflies that he's raised from caterpillars. There's that nice image that the eggs look like a little ellipsis. He's like texting his internet friend, who he clearly has a little flirtation with, being like, it's like they're trying to tell me something. You know, ... And I'm like, maybe this is his ... Like maybe he really is gonna.
I think it is significant that they chose to set this movie at that juncture. Like this is, like you said, letting go of that, a part of his life that has kept him grounded there. Like now that these children aren't there, what is his responsibility? Even though he does say to her, she won't live.
Yeah. The scene with his dad, too, is so harrowing. Like, where he sees his, like, he goes to see his, like, lonely dad who's, like, clearly in poor health and just, like, chain smoking. And you're like, oof. Like, he's just so good at pulling the sort of, like, the real deep sadness out of those scenes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like, you end up just being like, man, I just want this poor guy who was victimized to, like,
be free,
make a decision for himself. Yes. To be free, right?
To have a chance at an actual life that he feels somehow like that it's about him.
Yeah, and to like maybe choose a sexual partner that doesn't coerce him or undermine him, you know, like, and that's not, I'm not victim blaming here. Like clearly he has been like really abused, and he's only in this sort of like latter part of this movie really starting to reckon with that. And it is partly, I think, because his kids are leaving, because like, how do you reckon, how do you reckon with that when your kids are in the house? Yeah. Right. Like, how do you,
no, he's got a sense of responsibility. He really does. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that beautiful, like that moment with his son where he's like, don't worry, Dad, like I'm going to have a good life. And he's like, that's all I do. It's all I do is worry about you. And you're just like, he's like crying and high. And you're like, oh my gosh. But all that stuff, like, yeah, he's never gotten high. He's probably never done a science experiment. His like Facebook group about monarchs is like the only friends he seems to have outside of that relationship. And you're right. Like the point that you made, Andrea, just about like how isolating Gracie is as a person.
Yeah.
She just sucks you. She's like a black hole of need, right? Like the way that narcissists are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, do we think this movie pops? Do we recommend it?
Oh, definitely. I recommend it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's disturbing. I do think, like you go into it with it's really tragic. It really hurts. It's a really disturbing film.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we didn't talk about a ton about the levity, but there really are moments of levity, I think, provided by the score. I also want to give a shout out to the guy that plays her lawyer, who Elizabeth is having, like Gracie's lawyer who defended her in this case, who she's having lunch with at Margaritaville. And when she's like, wait, is that Georgie? And the lawyer goes, yeah, I hope things would work out better for him. Like the line read on that is so funny to me. Like he's just like, yeah, it didn't work out for that guy. Like, ooh, just like such a good, so well cast this movie.
Yeah.
From
agreed.
every single part, right? Just like perfectly cast from the first husband to like, the queer son who's ended up a performer at a Margaritaville, like just
that
a real
was
chef's
lot.
kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it pops. I think it's totally worth watching. And I think it's like there will be many a young actress auditioning for, I don't know, theater schools with Natalie Portman's mirror monologue from this film. So you should see it if only for that. You know, like it will become one of the monologues.
Yes.
I promise you that.
Okay, well, we like to end our podcast with stuff that we recommend. Cynara, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I would like to recommend a book, which is Ziwe's book. It came out in October. It's called Black Friend. It is so great. It's essays about race in America and about just the concept of being the Black friend. So Ziwe grew up in Massachusetts and was often sort of the only Black person in her class, for example, or one of two Black people in her class. And I just think her show on Showtime, which was tragically canceled, I hope it gets brought back. She's one of the most exciting comedians. Did I already recommend this? I'm getting deja vu.
It sounds familiar, but I think it's a good recommendation. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm recommending it again, and I'm also recommending if you haven't watched Ziwe's show, you watch it all because she rules.
You might have recommended the show before, so this book is different.
And her interview with George Santos came out.
Oh boy, I haven't seen it yet.
It is unbelievably amazing. So watch that.
I just love her. I will truly be haunted by one of the essays in this book for the rest of my life of her interaction with a white couple in a Subaru while she's hiking in upstate New York in a top hat for unclear reasons. Anyways.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
You know, yeah, you need to read it. I won't say anymore, but like truly a great book. And if you do the audiobook, it's read by Ziwe, which I love. And it's like a 5-hour audiobook. So a great weekend listen while you do your chores. You know what I mean?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, so I had recommended to me a Netflix series called Dash and Lily. It's actually like a YA story of these two teenagers that are alone at Christmas and start sharing confessions in a notebook that they pass between each other. And it's very New York, and they're very cool kids, and they just sort of dash around the city. There's lots of the Strand in there and different people. And if, as we mentioned, very disappointing books this year, it's quite sweet and just feels really light and fun. And who doesn't like seeing people run around New York?
That sounds good. This isn't my recommendation, but I was going to say if you're looking for a Todd Haynes Christmas movie, I rewatch Carol every Christmas season.
Oh, I love that.
I love
That's a
Carol.
wonderful
It's
movie.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. So
So
lush.
beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that movie. But I'm going to recommend Shawnee Kish has a new EP out called Revolution. And she's a singer-songwriter from Edmonton, Two-Spirit Indigenous artist. And this album is, I think, a real step forward for her. It was co-produced and co-written with Serena Ryder and Max Kerman and Derek Hoffman. And it's really... it's a great sounding album, and the single from it is called Stella, and it's really catchy and it's really great. And if you like Serena Ryder, I think you'll really love this album. So I highly recommend it.
Well, fantastic. And all the Oscar movies you have to see, that's on you. You have to do all that work.
Yeah. Yes. We'll be walking by your side through Oscar season. So stay
Golden
tuned.
Globe season.
Yes.
All of the seasons.
I can't. Speaking of, this movie's nominated in comedy, which is wild.
I know.
I
Wow.
get it, but I'm also like,
Yeah.
there's not a many laugh. It's not really a laugh out loud kind of vibe.
No, it is
No.
not. No.
So anyways, thank you all for listening. Thank you, Cynara, for joining us and
Thank
filling in
you
for
so much.
A-dubs today.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. What a great film to talk about.
Yes.
You know that my favorite thing is a film that makes Lisa uncomfortable.
Oh yeah. Well,
specifically. So
yeah.
that's I always when I'm watching a movie, I go, would this make Lisa uncomfortable? Yes, I love it. I know it's like a weird metric. Some people use the Bechdel test, but I have my special. Would this make Lisa Christiansen
I'm so happy to
squirm
help out. You know,
test?
this is, and I think I'm pretty transparent, so you can always guess.
But yeah, thank you for having me. Always a delight.
And so let me see if I can remember what A-Dubs usually says in this section. You can follow us on social media. We're Pop This on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can rate us 5 stars on pretty
That's
much
really
any
the only rating, but there you
podcast
go.
app. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd appreciate it. Yeah, and if you want to send us an email, you can email us at popthiscollective@gmail.com.
And now I know my line. Thanking you, Andrea Gin, for being our co-host and producer here, and thanking the audience for listening and, making 2023 an amazing year.
And we'll see you in 2024.
Wow.
The future.
Yeah.
Future.
We'll be looking forward to those jetpacks. See you then.
Okay, bye.